To understand the science to mixing perfect vocals, we need to acknowledge that they're difficult. They're difficult to mix for two reasons. The first reason is where the fundamental of the vocals sit.
Had we fallen in a trap where opposites attract, wish you would have cared more.
So for male vocals, like you can see there, the fundamental can be anywhere between 120 to 240 hertz. For females, it's about half an octave to an octave above, 180 to 360 hertz. Now, that frequency range, that 120 to 240 hertz, is the exact same frequency range all the harmonics from the bass line have. So all those second, third order harmonics from that sub sit exactly where the fundamental is for the vocals. And because they both sit in that same register, it means that when the vocals are too loud, the bass feels weak, and when the vocals are too soft, the bass feels really strong, and vice versa.
Because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where opposites attract, wish you would have cared more, cause you never text me back. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
The second issue is that recorded vocals are really hard to trick the human ear. 90% of what we hear in our lifetime are other people speaking, so most of the time it's really difficult to replicate space, auditory cues, reverberance, directionality, subtle harmonic complexities through a microphone. The microphone captures and then we have to sort of recreate it in this space of the music. And if you've ever added reverb to a vocal and it still sounds either too dry, or then you bring the reverb up, it's too washy, you know exactly what I mean. Now, to show you what you're going to get if you watch this video to the end, here is the before and after of the vocal and everything we're going to go over.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where opposites attract, wish you would have cared more, cause you never text me back.
Let's start mixing these vocals. We need to make sure we do it in the clip game before processing, because this is the information that feeds our compressors, that feeds our EQs, that feeds our reverb chain. We want to get this as clean as possible. So here's the original dry version, and we're going to play this through, and let's get our grid mode set to quarter notes. Perfect. And we'll play this through.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
What's the first thing you pick up there? I don't even need to look at meters for this. It's pretty consistent, but there's a tonal shift that happens there, and there's a bit of proximity effect. So take a listen to this.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
So that last note there.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
Listen to that low note.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
It's a little bit louder. It's a little bit louder. And the overall volume is equivalent of what we've got going on here, but I don't want to bring it, the whole section down. I want to go into my audio suite, get an EQ. We're going to get EQ2. Where's EQ2? A, B, C, D, E, EQ there. Okay. We're going to go negative 2.5 dB, and that was about 180 hertz. So we're going to go 2.5 at 180 hertz, and we'll render that. Now we'll have a listen again.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
Okay, that's the volume of that phrase. Let's go here.
Falling in a trap where, falling in a trap where, falling in a trap where. Feeling like a fool, feeling like a fool, feeling like...
Okay, so this whole section I reckon can come up just a smidge.
Feeling like a fool, falling in a trap where...
Better, but there's a problem here at the start.
Had we fallen in a...
Had we. Had we is a little bit soft. We're going to go into slip mode. I can't use grid for this. And I did this in the original edit anyway, where I brought it up a bit. I'm just going to clip gain that up. And we'll play this phrase through.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where...
You need to go through all your vocals and do this. I sound like a crazy man, but I have a faster way of doing the volume writing that I've been trying out recently. So there might be flaws in this, all right, but it's something I've been doing on background vocals, and I still do my lead vocals like this, but I've been trying it on background vocals and harmonies and stuff, things that aren't in the front, because it's super quick, and at least up until now, I haven't had any issues with it. And what it is it's actually Wave's Vocal Rider. I've seen this before, but I never got onto it, and I'll actually show you exactly how I set it up so it works perfectly. Okay, it works absolutely freaking perfectly. What I will do is I'll take the softest word in the mix. So let's say this phrase here.
Back.
That back is really soft, yeah? So I'll take that and I'll go to the loudest phrase, which is around here. And what I'll do is I'll loop these across, okay? We'll loop them over one another, and I'll get the volume of one and then the volume of the other, and then set the threshold in the middle and change the range to the difference.
Back, 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 back.
Okay, so from 47.9 to 37.9, that's a range of 10. Okay. Then all we're going to do is set the right, no, not all we're going to do. We're actually going to do a couple more steps to get this working perfect. Has to be in fast mode. And we're going to set this threshold to the middle point of those two signals.
Back, 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 back. Back, 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 back.
That's just to get the setup. So you get the softest vocal phrase, the loudest one, you put them against each other, you create your range, and then you set your threshold. Where the magic is you can actually write automation. If you enable automation on this, you write automation in, and then you create a rider fader there. You go latch. Okay, so it's going to latch to it. And what you can do here is actually press play on these vocals and take a look at this vocal line at the bottom. Okay, this is where it gets cool.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where our opposites attract? Wish you would have cared more, cause you never text me back.
So take a look at what we've got here. We have a full automation line here for the volume, which we can have as a plugin at the start of our chain. That will automate how much signal goes into our plugin. So the loud stuff gets brought down, soft gets brought up. You could use a compressor, but with the compressor, you can't go back into each of these automation points. And if it gets anything wrong, or it's a bit pumpy, or it moves a bit slow, I can actually go back in and edit these points and move this from write mode to read mode. So any edits I make on this line get read by the plugin. It's wild. This is something I've been trying on background vocals and harmonies. It's something that is you can take and test and keep using, but it is something I'm going to do a video on in deeper depth down the track. Now, let's just get rid of this plugin for the sake of assuming that you've done all your editing on your lead vocal, as I said you should here, and it's ready to level. Now, because you're ready to level the vocals, this is something I do, and this is something I learned from Matthew Weiss in one of his pop mixing walkthroughs. We're talking like 2016, 2017 or something, and it is to level the lead vocals with the bass elements, and to do it at a very low volume, or at least I do it in a very low volume. I can't remember whether he recommended to, but basically Fletcher-Munson curve. Yes, that's right. The Fletcher-Munson curve, when you're monitoring low, your ears aren't as it doesn't perceive as much high frequencies. And that is good, because if you can get your vocals to level with the bass at a very low monitoring volume, okay, so they've both got fundamentals in that same energy range, that like 150 to 300 hertz-ish range. If you can get them to balance evenly at a very low volume, when you bring it up, they're both going to be sitting quite nicely. At least that's my experience. I've mixed probably over 100 records in the last couple of years using that technique. So what I want you guys to do is, as I level this vocal, drop your monitoring down, so you can just hear how the vocal sits depending on where I'm pocketing it.
Had we fallen in a trap where our opposites attract? Wish you would have cared more, cause you never text me. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where our opposites opposites attract. Wish you would have cared more, cause you never text me. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
Okay, that's how I level my lead vocal, is everything down, bass, lead, get it in a nice pocket. The next thing with this particular vocal I actually ended up doing on the mix was in Ozone 11. Now, Ozone 11 has a few really cool features, and mainly is the clarity in the top end. Now, with vocals, they can jump around a lot. Your k, d, p, all those noises. I'm not talking about the plosives down low. I'm talking about the diction in terms of how clearly those consonants come out can move around a lot. Sometimes they can be really soft. Sometimes they can be really loud. Sometimes they can be intrusive. This plugin really helps it. And this is the first thing I put on this vocal because I felt like it really needed to have consistent diction in the vocals because the lyrics were so strong. Like as in the lyrics were the focus. This is the artist's project. They're a great vocalist and they want every word to be heard. So take a listen to this before and after.
Cared more cause you never text me back. 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 Cared.
It's subtle, but to my ear, it makes a big difference in the mix. And as we progress, you'll actually hear that when IAB with the full mix going. The next thing is the stabilizer. This is a really weird way for me to use the stabilizer in mixing vocals. Typically, I have it in cut mode and just the highs working as a de-esser. But for this one, I don't know why, I just sort of fell in love with the way it's shaped the mid-range and the top end on this.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
It's a lot of gain to the top end, but it moves with the vocal quite a lot, so I don't mind it. I actually really liked it for this. I just wanted to show you what I was doing in the chain so you've got something there. But this is more now we can actually pull into the science side of it. I've got the LA2A. And for a vocal like this that's already pretty consistent, I don't want anything too intrusive. I don't want a plosive to come in or some consonants to come in and make the whole compressor duck. I need something that's going to be a little bit more slower in how reactive it is. And that's why I picked this compressor here.
Had we fallen in a trap where our opposites attract? Wish you would have cared more cause you never text me.
So now we got that first part done. Let's actually have a listen to where these vocals sit in the mix, because we leveled it to the bass and the rest of the instruments are all mixed. How do these vocals now sit that this vocal has been edited, each word tonally, that we've managed some of the tone and some of the dynamics here. Let's have a listen.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where our opposites attract? Wish you would have cared more cause you never text me back.
But now is the really hard part. How do we make this a convincing space that the listener listens to it and goes, wow, I get where that's coming from? And what we're going to create here, step by step, is this vocal chain here. I'm just going to do the send and then I'll show you how each channel is set up. Take a listen.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where our opposites attract? Wish you would have cared more cause you never text me back. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where our opposites attract? Wish you would have cared more cause you never text me back. I've been feeling like a fool.
So what we're going to do now is go through each parallel chain, because I've got 5 or 6 parallel chains, all with a different effect on it that we are able to blend in and manipulate around to create a real 3-dimensional sound in the vocal. And the first thing with this vocal is I want there to be clarity throughout. Now, I know we use the clarity plugin for the diction. I know we've got stabilizer working, some tonal things, but I want the lowest level detail, so the very softest bits of information in this vocal, to always be present. I want this vocal to be right in your face 24/7. And not because I want to have it super loud, but because I don't want any detail to be missed. You know, when you listen to a song and the vocals are always there, they're not dipping and moving and bumping around. This is one way to do it. And a lot of this vocal chain, I'm actually following Andrew Sheps's parallel processing because that's what I learned this from, but it works. At least it's been working for me, and that's what I want to share with you. So the first thing to do is this first parallel chain. So we've got a send here from our main vocal. It goes out. This first parallel chain is a parallel process whereby we're aiming to focus the processing on the top end. We really want to get that top end super compressed. So the first plugin here is the Pull Tech, where we attenuate all the low end, boost the very top end air. And that's the very first thing we do before we continue on in the chain. So take a listen to this.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
That part of the vocal is what I always want to hear, okay? We always want to hear that. So what we're going to do is we're going to compress it quite heavily with the CLA 2A, okay? Now take a listen to this as I compress it really hard.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
The whole thing is in your face. Now, sometimes I swap between the 2A and the DBX 160, depending if I want a little bit more attitude there or I want it a bit more smooth. I want it a bit more smooth, so we're using the 2A. And then what we do after that 2A is we bring back the low end into the signal. So we've got all that top end being crushed and compressed, and then the low end that is in there is just moving as it should, naturally.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
And we'll mute and unmute this parallel send, okay? And take a listen. It's very subtle, but it just adds that clarity to the top end, which I really enjoy.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
It does what it says on the packet. It just adds that nice consistency to the top end, so the vocal is always there. So the next thing we're going to look at is our reverb. Now, when we pick a reverb, we need to pick a reverb that is, I at least find, that is opposite the main vocal. So if you have a bright vocal, go for a warm reverb. If you have a warm vocal, go for a brighter reverb. Something that's complementary. You still have to filter it with the EQ so it doesn't sound too harsh if you go for a brighter reverb, but this one is quite a warm reverb. Even though I'm going for a bright pop vocal, on top of everything, I'm trying to warm it up with the reverb to add some thickness. So take a listen to this reverb.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
Okay, now let's say we go from the 80s to the now where it's a bit brighter. It's going to sound a little bit more different.
Had we fallen in a trap where opposites attract, wish you would have cared more.
It also catches a lot of the sibilants when you do it that way, whereas when I go to the 80s version, it's a little bit more denser.
Never text me back. This telltale heart that's been beating underneath my doormat. It's silent when I'm kissing up and down your back.
Now, did you hear the issue with this reverb? Can you hear the issue? And this is where people get stuck with their reverbs because they start washing it and then things get harsh and abrasive. I hope you heard it. It was the sibilants. Okay, you can't have sibilants going through your reverb. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the de-esser and add your de-esser before your reverb, okay? De-essers before reverb. Be as aggressive as you want here because you need to make sure no S's are getting through that reverb, period. Period. Should not be happening.
Had we fallen in a trap where opposites attract, wish you would have cared more, cause you never text me. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
Yeah, and this is an issue some people have, is they put the de-esser after the reverb, but the problem is once the reverb catches the sibilants, it's in the whole tail of the reverb. So you're going to put the de-esser before the reverb, build your reverb out, go for a complementary reverb, and take a listen to this together. A very clean tone for the overall reverb.
Had we fallen in a trap where opposites attract, wish you would have cared more, cause you never text me back.
The next one is the slapback. And the slapback, this is just the preset on Echo Boy. It's called Vocal Doubler. Listen to this. This just adds the subtlest amount of depth to the vocal.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where opposites attract, wish you would have cared more, cause you never text me back.
So now the widener. Now this is a really interesting one. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this up. I'm going to get rid of my time marker there. We've got 16 and 32 milliseconds. So 16 milliseconds on the right, 32 milliseconds on the left. We'll monitor this in mono and take a listen to what happens to the vocal if you do it like this. Okay, we're going to monitor it in mono.
I've been feeling like a fool.
Weird as hell because they're doubles of one another. So they're moving in and out of phase at the same oscillating rate because they're exactly spread out. So let's bring this down to 29. It's still going to be very polarizing, but it's not going to be as polarizing. We're listening to the mono, not the stereo signal.
'Cause I loved him. Had we fallen in a trap where our opposites attract?
It's not as freaking weird because if I go 32 milliseconds, which is double 16, it's going to get crazy again. Let's go back to here.
I've been feeling like a fool.
Subtle, you go 29 or even 26 isn't bad. And take a listen now.
I've been feeling like a fool.
Okay, now we are listening to the mono signal, which is wild. And you're never going to hear this in the mix like that, but let's get rid of our mono and let's actually listen to that stereo wider.
I've been feeling like a fool.
Okay, so it's nice and big and wide. Now let's go back to our lead vocal and listen to that wideness subtly blended in because this end just is at unity, it's not boosted. And we can have a listen to this now.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
It's just a subtle amount of width. Now, the next channel is my favorite channel because it's where you can choose to get a little bit more creative. And fuck yes, I did on this one. This is Baby Audio Tape, and it is saturating and crunching the hell out of these vocals. Take a listen to this with it off and on.
I've been feeling like a fool because...
How cool is that tone? It's not the tone you ever want for your whole vocal, but it's all right to have in parallel and blend underneath it because it just adds a little bit of grit, all right? A little bit of grit.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
Finally, we've got this shine channel here, which is the Aphex Vintage Excite, and this just adds a little bit of sheen to everything.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
And then the final one here is this big reverb we put on with the client, which is this Manny Marroquin reverb, and then we're sidechaining the vocals into it, so it just opens up on the tail of each phrase.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him.
So what? Anybody can set up a bunch of parallel channels and put effects on them and whatever. But this is where the magic comes in. You have full flexibility to shape a three-dimensional sound now, okay? And I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. I'm going to mute the lead vocal, play the full mix with just these effects and blend each one in just until I can hear it, just where it's in the distance that it feels right in the mix. And that's the really important and part about doing this whole process. Beautiful. Now let's take a listen to these vocals before and after all this processing.
I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had me falling in a trap where opposites attract. Wish you would have cared more, 'cause you never text me. I've been feeling like a fool because I loved him. Had me falling in a trap where opposites attract. Wish you would have cared more, 'cause you never text me.
So now what you have is you have the basis to do whatever the hell you want with your vocals. Not only have you got a really well leveled vocal, you have ability to add presence and consistent presence with this fader here, the parallel processing with the pull text. You have ability to blend as much reverb, as much slap, as much width, as much crush, as much distortion, as much additional reverb because there's an extra reverb channel there. But you have flexibility to shape the tone of this vocal and have it sit perfectly in the mix. And if you want a similar breakdown but on kick drums and bass, you should really go out and check this video here. And until next time, take care.